Welcome back to our lofty program, State of the Nation, where we hasten the motions for national development. And when it comes to national development, you're part of it too. On this, our second segment, we shall be dealing with what makes development. In other words, I'm talking about politics. It is politics that we usher in a new set of people that will run the government of Nigeria. And when we are waiting for that, as we speak, we're on the threshold of that 2023 elections that is going to usher in another new government. But presently, the female folks are making waves, and there is need for us to think about them. Little wonder, our discussion this morning is going to be anchored on that element of women inclusion in politics. Are they included? Are they excluded? Are they doing enough? Are they coming out enough? You need not bother your head. I have one of the best people around here that is going to do justice to that element of women inclusion in politics. Join me in welcoming my sister, Adara Oyekere, to the studios. Good morning, my sister.
Good to have you. Good to also be here with you as well.
That's right. That's right. I'm sure you know the face. And I am sure you're ready to assimilate some good info that you can fly with. My sister, what we're discussing this morning is that element of women inclusion in politics. Thank God it is you, because I'm going to throw questions, loads and loads of questions at you. For starters, are women doing enough before they lay claim that, oh, there is marginalization? Are they doing enough in politics?
I think let's do a backtrack.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Take the trajectory from where it all began. I think I would like to, cast some lights on where we are now before we get to what we need to do.
Okay.
From the year 2010 to about the year 2020, the population of women were about 101.2 million Nigerians, women,
That's
as
right.
against 104 million men. And you remember that, before that, we just got into a democracy in 1999, and then counting down, you also remember that there have been several policies to create an opening space for women to get involved in politics and governance and policy making. But the question would be, how activated are those policies in the real sense of the word? Because again, you cannot look at the exemption of policies and policy making and decision making.
Of course.
They go hand in hand. And the only way that we can actually draw a thread from that is also look at how the legislature also enables those laws to be able to be binding on government, to be able to create those spaces as action platforms. The Gender Equal Opportunities, bill has seen its feats accomplished, in the Senate twice. And of course, we saw the extra seat bill by Nkiru Kunyajocha also did not meet it, at the National Assembly. The 5 gender bills were stepped down. You're also looking at that currently that the federal government is appealing a 35% affirmative action by the Nigerian women for inclusion. So you're looking at the space, you're looking at the political will, you're also looking at implementation of existing policies. Currently, I know that there was a baseline report and a research that was done by Gender Strategy Advancement International, I think in partnership with Wole Soyinka Investigative Journalism Center. Yes, and MacArthur Foundation. And one of the revelations was that if you look at the budget itself, in terms of budgets, there were over 101 billion naira stipulated for women economic empowerment projects. Where are the monies? Who is implementing? How is it appropriated?
Do we really have the money? Is there any money there?
Now, the truth is not the fact that there is money or no money. The fact that it is documented and is supposed to be implemented. There should be a certain level of oversight and management function by the legislature with the ministries and departments and agencies and by those people who are in charge.
That's right.
Now, if there is no funding and there is no financial inclusion and there is no empowerment across communities, especially for women's inclusion, especially in politics, then you would also see women suffer That is where you see when they come to nominations and, getting nomination forms, they're saying, no, women can get 50%, discount. Some parties will say, oh, free of charge. But then it is a case of tokenism, and inclusion. So you
you don't like that at all.
Absolutely. So you're saying, okay, give them 50% and give it for free, but they never emerge at the primaries because, again, it goes back to the highest bidder. And you know that the women might not naturally be willing to have those funds. So now back to your question, are the women doing enough? Now, if there is an enabling, empowering structure within the political space, which first of all is the political parties, and then you also have the laws that back these engagements, and then number three, you also have the harmonization of interest groups, which is what the women did by saying, you know what, we might not get everything at the same time, but let's look at 35% affirmative action and see how we can go through appointive positions. And we were expecting that maybe the federal government would say, we don't really think that 35% is good enough right now. We probably have to work our way up, maybe 20%, maybe 30%. But to outrightly appeal that case by the federal government, one, it shows lack of political will. One, it shows that the government is paying lip service to inclusion. So on one front, political parties are trying to engage and re-engineer their spaces by having more women in the political party structure. But then again, in terms of laws that will edify and also help aid the opening of spaces for women, the government does not want to pay that homage. So it is quite interesting, the question you've asked, because it's not enough for women to lobby, organize, and come together ask for a certain level of, engagement. And the federal government said, no, well, we are not ready. This is what we'd rather do. So where exactly is the political will?
I would like to throw another question at you based on what you've just said now. And that question is, we're talking politics here. And in most cases, when it comes to politicking, most of the rules and laws and modalities that guides politicking, even when they are written, they are not adhered to. Absolutely. It is the personal impact of whoever is laying it across. Because I do say one thing that, take for instance, Governors Forum. It's not anywhere in our laws, but it has come to stay. I call it a club of governors. In terms of politicking, women are a strong factor. Very, very strong factor when it comes to the electorate. Why is it that you cannot leverage on all those factors that you have and then be able to forge ahead? It's not enough to say, okay, the men are going to outshine us. But at the end of the day, the men go to the electorate, which in most cases, the highest percentage are women and youths. Why don't you leverage on that? And let us start from there and leave the political parties with their shenanigans, so to speak.
Now, the politics of Nigeria is emerging. And I think I say that because, whether we like it or not, we have lived in a patriarchal system for a long time. And it's also very obvious that there's a high level of misogyny, except that we are beginning to see women step forward deliberately, act deliberately, and also try to break down barriers deliberately. Again, you would also understand that even from the time of Gambo Sawaba, and the Kutsis and, the Aba Women's Riots, and coming into now the Maputo protocols and all of that, it took a sense of documentation to get us into history, to understand where we were to where we are now and where we're going.
Of course.
And whether we like it or not, the tragedy of inclusion in Nigeria is still a case of popularizing the ideology that women can. And I think in the ideology that women can is what is now very obvious as gender inclusion has taken the center space. So women are beginning to know that they can run for elections. They're beginning to know they can mobilize for women. They're beginning to know that women groups are a strong force and a very big lobbying platform. And so those spaces are opening up. But then in real time, to go down to the communities, into the electorates, into talking about the possibilities of being voted for. It is only about 5 to 10 years ago that we started seeing that kind of conversation at that level. Because regardless of those kinds of action plan and intervention, the buck stops at the table of the consultations and what the party decides. So
course,
if the
yes.
party decides that a puppet will go on behalf of the people, even if the people says, no, we believe in a certain person, we want to vote for that person, again, is a case of having the votes count when they are voted and then doing the counting. And so the issues and the in between the lines still falls back to the structure, still falls back to the system. But then we are emerging, and that's why I said we're emerging from that dynamic where we are seeing levels of conversations on social media where young people, women, their voices
coming
are
out some
emanating,
more.
are saying we want effective leadership. We want people who can. We want people who would say what they will do. And we are putting our hearts and our money to those people to be able to see them emerge. And that is where women need to come in. That is a space women need to take over. The space that is voiced but unseen. Because that is exactly the dynamics that are working. Whether you like it or not, people will argue, oh, how do those people on the social media vote? How do those people that are not seen vote? Because a sense of working the mindset is very important. Now, it might start
It's a pure case of work in progress.
Absolutely. And whether you like it or not, the average man in the village has a phone that can get on Facebook. They are looking for how to get involved. I mean, when you hear clarion calls of certain politicians being the, viable positions for that kind of role, it came out from conversations like this. So women should begin to look towards popularizing their issues, their conversations through popular platforms. Again, they should also understand that the population that they have can only be a currency until they activate it.
Of course.
And so you're seeing women say, oh, we have the better population, women, but how are you utilizing it as a currency for lobbying?
Let me throw a curve in there.
Yeah.
That element of ethno-religious angle. It impedes a lot of what women will want to do. If we kind of split Nigeria into two, maybe you talk in terms of the south or in the north. In the north, that element of religion is highly impeding on women. How are you guys getting out of that?
Well, it's not something you get out of. It's something you try to help to reshape.
And how are you doing that?
And that is how you get conversations across communities, getting the faith-based organizations, getting the traditional groups involved, getting the women and the local government involved. Now, from the baseline reports and the research, you find out that councillors, as about, from the year 2020 till about now, I think year back to 2019, only 9 women made it as councillors, 9% women made it as councillors, as against 91%, and local government chairmen and states, governors. And we've never had a female governor, except by default. Now, deputy governors, yes, but then it went downhill. Now, whether you like it or not, every state is dynamic based on their religious leaning, based on their cultural leaning.
That's right.
Now, every section of the country has a leading voice in some of those areas, whether it be the imam or the bishop or the women in the traditional groups. There must be a way to look at those as hanging fruits, to engage further on demystifying the role of the dissentive of religion on politics, the role of the dissentive of religion on leadership for women, especially in that space.
That's right.
And we've seen a lot of engagement, we've seen a lot of conversations, but my worry sometimes is, how do we take this to the bottom-up approach? How are those conversations taken back to the communities and sustained? There's a lot of programming, a lot of projects, a lot of workshops, a lot of summits, but at the end of the day, how do we sustain the engagement? You're also looking at women living with disabilities as well. You're looking at the vulnerable groups. So it's not just about the woman who you can see, it's also about the woman who has a voice that is unseen. And so how you maximize that space. The Women in Parliament committee at the National Assembly, how are they also localizing their conversation?
Right.
How are the state assemblies activated? Now that's a very, very, very interesting area to touch, because when you do not have women represented at the state assemblies,
at that lower grassroots level,
absolutely. So the inclusion is the exclusion is louder and the intervention is smaller. So I think that's why, again, it goes back to elected positions to see how, for me, first, the state assemblies to have equal representation, or at least almost equal representation.
That's a good place to start from.
Absolutely, to have women's voices represented, so that the communication on these issues you've touched on starts at the rural level and then works its way up.
Let me take you on this. You said something earlier that, okay, when it comes to politicking, women don't have the funds to do this or do that. There are instances where men don't have the funds either. And what happens is, there are some big guns behind them. Let's use one word for them, the CEOs. These days, we have a lot of women that are CEOs in real huge companies, conglomerates. Are the women CEOs, are they ready? Because I know, for one, that they don't come up with their funds yet to back up female contestants, female politicians. When are they going to do that? Because that is what the men are doing. It's not in all cases that the men have the funds. Somebody somewhere is fronting them. And now that we have women with large purses, why don't they back their women folks?
I think, I believe that, you know, I take it back to what I said about the conversation indoors, behind closed doors.
That's right.
Within the structures of the political party, and the conversation behind and before the political parties, before the election. Remember that even if when you have the funds, you also need the funding, the mental funding of, one, the issues of conversation on whether the person has capacity. Secondly, whether the person is popular.
Of course.
Popularity is a currency of politics.
Of course, yes.
And even a blind CEO knows that. And so even when you want to fund, the first question they would ask is, I know you have capacity, I know you can do this, but how in touch with your people are you? Are you going home? Are you familiarized with your electorates at the grassroots? Those are the key questions that most CEOs would ask women. There are lots of women who have capacity. There's so many of them who want to engage politically. They're perhaps also doing that technically in their own area of expertise and their profession. But politics is local. Because at the end of the day, you want to be able to put your money where your mouth is and then be able to see that the person that you support emerges at the primaries because, one, they are very popular and can even take an incumbent candidate, you know, to the polls and win them. So again, it comes back to the political party structure and how you are engaging, how you are going back home. Now, if the CEO so believes in the candidate, I think the funding should come in funding activities of such a person who is not in touch yet, to go back home and do the needful. You cross your T's and you dot your I's. Go back to the people, get in touch with the electorates, begin to speak the language of service, look at the areas that are there where there are gaps, and begin to reorganize. And I believe that when that is done, the first things first is, do your people know you? How do they interact with your needs? What service do you think you're bringing to the table? When that conversation begins and expands, what then now happens is that you have the popularity to sell to the party. And so when you say you want to fund a specific woman in a party, it now becomes very commonsensical. I mean, it's obvious that this person is in touch, but the only thing they need is funding. But if you bring a new personality in the space of people who are already tired, who are already resigned, who do not have faith in the system, and whom this person you're bringing, yes, has all the capacity in the world, but doesn't really have a flair for engaging the people, it's a bit difficult to sell the currency.
A wrong investment.
Yes, to sell the currency of that personality without popularizing it, you might hit a brick wall at some point. But what I'm saying is that women who have funding should look at the women who have capacity, who have the drive.
Is that happening from what you can see? Is that happening?
Absolutely. I mean, in several forums, you have organizations like GSI, Gender Strategy Advancement International. You have organizations like Women for Women. You have organizations like cultural groups like Nkatandi Yom. You have organizations like Yaga Africa, Women in Politics Forum, organizing, looking at women with capacities and even mentoring them, even those who do not have political, knowledge, but have the capacity to be political. So the engagement is ongoing, programs are ongoing. But again, what I keep saying is, instead of us to just sit in a central pool, let us take it down to the communities and begin to dissect areas of engagement where the women's voices can be largely felt.
Are you seeing that lately?
Yes and no. Yes, because there is a lot of organizing. There's a lot of, implementations of those plans. But then again, we are also bothered about the insecurity. Now, at the level of engagement at the communities, especially in the north, most women, there are a lot of northern women in this dispensation, in this common, engagement for the 2023 election, who are coming out, who want to lead, who want to show service. But then again, these are areas that are really touched on by severe insecurity. And so the question is, how do you engage people who are already disenfranchised by terror, people who are already hungry, displaced, people who do not feel well taken care of by the government. The first thing they want to see is, how do you help us out of the situation? How do we feed? Where is the food coming? I mean, look at the rate of dollar against the naira. So the economy and the security is the first point of intervention. And I feel that that is what is also shrinking the space for communications of women who have political will to be able to step down to those areas. How many women emerge at the primaries? Just barely 2%. And we don't even have a female presidential candidate, vice presidential candidate.
There was one, she stepped down.
Why did she step down? That's the question.
No, but she didn't get the proper support.
Exactly my point. So now you also begin to look at the conversation of internal party mechanism for gender inclusion. If the party says we want a woman to go, and the women have the funding, like you said, by the CEOs, and there is a general argumentation from different, pressure groups and lobby groups, there is no how a woman cannot emerge. However, is our politics growing into that era where we may see more women emerge? Yes, we have seen more, but we saw less in this administration, and we may see less in the next administration because from the primary timetable and those who emerged, we barely saw women, even at the senatorial level. And even those who are emerging are having to go through the courts. So it's a very dire situation. But again, I come back to you to say, unless this country, just like Rwanda, just like Ghana, just like Namibia and South Africa, have the political will and say, you know what, we do know the strength of women and their population, and the only way you can have full development, a wholesome, thriving economy, is by having your better half and the force that is the burden bearer of both insecurity, of both economy, in the center of the conversation. There are over 97% women in agro-business and agro-farming, but they do not have the requisite remuneration as the other percentage of the men. And that is actually very preposterous. And then you look at the economy, and then you look at those who are also in small, medium enterprises. Most of them are women. Over 75% of online businesses are owned by women.
That's right.
So how do you also look at galvanizing and taking that number and making it into a currency?
Translate it into
politics. And that's the question.
Let me ask you, my next question is going to border on the fact of gender. I enjoy your program on air, Agenda. Virtually most of our viewers, they catch on to you too. What I'm saying now is, my question is based on you as a woman. Let me use myself as an example. I grew up in a family where my mom was the all in all. The man goes out to bring in the funds and wherewithal, she takes care of everything. Discipline, school, this and that. And I'm sure that's why I came out this good. Answer my question from the angle of a woman. Don't you think if we have too many or too much of women in politicking, that the home front will be shirking in some aspects?
First of all, I find this question very sexist.
I know you will go there. That was why I said I'll throw it at you as a woman.
I find it very sexist. And then secondly, I would want to ask, would you ask this of a man if he was on your show and say, how does he feel if the man is providing and the woman is at home? And that is where the problem lies. Reorientating.
That's why I asked you.
About gender identities. Now, gender means men or women. But then in our conversation, we're looking at the minority group in that group, which are women, because that's where the exclusion lies. But if you begin to articulate that a home front can only be engineered to function because the women are only present, then it also goes to say that you are emboldening the status of men as beneficiaries and entitled groups of a smaller status quo, which in other words means that women, at the end of the day, are only homemakers, should be homemakers, and should stay in the other room, which is arguably, in fact, vehemently arguably, that it is absolutely preposterous, dangerous,
I intentionally spiked you.
and out of touch with the realities of our time. And I think this is the kind of questions that emboldens the president to say, well, women should be in the other room. And it's quite telling. I'm almost...
Our viewers are enjoying it.
I agree to some certain extent that women are nurturers. And that's why when you give a woman finance, she maximizes. You put her in a leadership position, she opens up doors. You put her into politics, she's a servant leader. And that's where we need to go. More women in politics doesn't mean less women at home.
Of course.
More women in politics doesn't mean the homes will not function. It takes two people to look at a home front. Sometimes it might just be a parent. So what happens to when there's just the parent in the home front? I mean, our societies are emerging to begin to think about home training, orientation as a thing of the society. Because one person, not even the parent, can raise a child alone. So it starts from the school, it starts from the environment, it starts from the church, it starts from the mosque. It's a social space where both parties or one party is responsible for the output. So at the end of the day, I think one of the most important things for us to tell and retell is the fact that women are as powerful as you give spaces of power. However, because the spaces are there already, what women can do is to begin to maximize by getting engaged. And like I said earlier, a woman is a nurturer, so that means she can multitask, she's flexible.
Oh yeah, of course.
And so you find out that even your mom that raised you and you turned out this way, there were times where perhaps she would have wanted to do something else, but because she probably was engaged psychologically to think home first, that was her first priority call. And raising children is a full-time job.
Of course.
And being in the family is also a career. There are career housewives. There are career homemakers. And that's even where women in politics need to even look at. Those are the legislature, to see how they can create a welfare fund where women who decide to stay home are also remunerated for their status quo. It's done in England. It's done in the US. It's done in developed countries. So if we keep the gender identities surrounding women to mean that women are responsible for the turnout or the output or the productive adult, then it means that we are taking away from the men the responsibility of being the head. So otherwise, you might just as well say the toga of men being the head of the home is just idealistic. In the real sense of the word, women are the ones who do the job.
Thank you. You know what? You've been able to get across to Nigerians. And I'm happy about one thing. I was able to spike you up a little bit and you said, no, that is sexist. But the thing is, you were able to give us the basics, the underlying basics. And honestly, I would like you to give our viewers an executive summary of maybe 2, 3, 5, 10 sentences. That is your camera. Talk directly at our viewers back at home and give them your tidbits. The ones that can hear you, let them learn from you so that they can imbibe a little bits and pieces of what you've just said. Because it's not going to happen in one day.
I know, absolutely, and not even a year. But, like they say, journey of 1,000 miles starts with a step. I think for me, most importantly, is that women should go out. I know that the registration exercise is almost up, but please go out and get your voter's card if you haven't. And believe me, it starts from voting. It starts from voting out a system that does not look at inclusion. It starts at voting out a system that does not look at effective leadership as a composite energy of both the male and the female. It starts from the voting population where their voices will equate to the kind of leaders that will look at women's roles as part of a governance system. And from the family, I think that we should begin to raise the families of an enabling environment where equity is the word, where the roles that are mounted to the boys are also mounted to the girls, and that the fact that girls are raised to think that they should be seen and not heard should also come from the family, where girls are allowed to use their voices to be able to say what they think and be able to aspire to any ambition. Nigeria is at the bottom list of gender inclusion, and we cannot do that just by having these conversations technically and having some of these conversations in the media. Beyond what you see in the media, charity begins at home. Inclusion is a socio-psychological conversation. It starts from the church, it starts from the mosque, it starts from our religious groups, it starts from the marketplace, it starts from the family. And until we are able to look at that status quo, the family, and begin to re-engineer, teach our boy children that yes, girls can too, and that they grow up understanding that sexual and gender-based violence too is a non-order in a society like ours, we perhaps may be having this conversation again. So reorientation, re-engagement, and having sustainable conversations from our social spaces is very important.
Thank you very much, my sister. And to you, our viewers out there, that has been Adaora Onyetere, a broadcast journalist, executive director of Gender Strategy Advancement International. And then if you are on the screen on a regular basis, you will find her on Gender Agenda. My sister,
thank you.
It's been great having you. But I just remembered one thing I wanted to touch on. We're on the threshold of 2023.
Uh-huh.
What do you, this one is going to be kind of hypothetical.
Mm.
What do you kind of think should happen to Nigerians? What kind of government do you envisage? Do you pray for? So that we're not having it too good, honestly. Don't let's delude ourselves. We're not having it too good. So at the same time, from a feminist angle, not feminist really.
Oh yeah, feminist is fine.
Feminist is fine, but are you? Okay, from a feminist angle, what do you think of in terms of 2023?
A pragmatic leader.
Of course.
Someone that would speak truth to the people and engage the people's truth. Because what we have seen is the fact that government, it's almost as if their truth is only relative to them, but not relative to the electors, to the people. So we want a relationship, a symbiosis of ideas. A leader that will think out of the box and also understand that there are also people around and out of those boxes that can re-engage at the lowest level, at the community level, and have empathy for people's plight. Not a government that will fly to the next conference when there are millions, thousands of people being killed day after day. I think that also a government that is conscious about our economy, that is bothered about our borrowing capacity for things that are not important, and the fact that we need to begin to look internally to develop our internally generated revenue through our homegrown solutions. Nigeria is the only way Nigeria can breathe. If our leadership keeps thinking towards aids and confirming grants and getting the international communities to do their job, then we will never truly have a true democracy. So it must be about Nigeria, by Nigeria, for Nigerians. And that is the message. We must think of people who will think of homegrown solutions within this country and use the massive population of young, excited, vibrant young people within its calculations.
Thank you, my sister. I'm back at you, our viewers. I don't think we've had a better tutorial than what we're having this morning. And the idea is this. We're not trying to force feed you. What we're doing here is give you the ideas that you can sit back and form your own opinions with. Your opinion is highly important because that determines what you are going to do. Adaora has been able to give us basics, the brass tacks, what needs to be done. As a person, as part of the electorate, without your franchise of one man, one vote. She said it while she was talking that if you don't have a PVC and you're 18 years old, go and get yourself one. Because that is the first step by which you can decide who governs you. By which you can decide, oh, this man or this woman is a better servant leader than the other person. That is the only way you can exercise your franchise. And I'll tell you this for free. I am going to bring her back here in not too distant future so that she can inculcate those ideas into us that we will personally develop on and form personal opinions. My sister, from our viewers back at home, from me here in the studios, from my men out here, one big thank you for honoring the invite.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me. Great job, by the way.
And to you, our viewers, don't go away. Stay with us.
Based on logistics, there are two categories of young people in Nigeria today. The first category, the educated, empowered, and privileged. The second category, the poor, the deprived, and angry young people, who form the majority of the youth population you refer to, and are the ones that have become the tools of trade in the hands of the politicians. So we, the young people who are educated and can make the type of decisions and understand where Nigeria needs to go, are in our minority. The ones in the villages and the bushes who don't have education, who are poor and angry, who become area boys, do not even have food to eat 3 times one day. Now, where do we go from here? How do we promote inclusiveness? Nigeria and Africa have to become entities that embrace consequences. What do I mean by that? Consequences, when we begin to punish bad behavior in Nigeria, when people steal our money and we put them in jail, Nigeria and Africa will become better countries. I'll tell you why, sir. In Singapore, under Lee Kuan Yew, a minister bargained with a contractor and took money and took bribe from him to give him a contract. When Lee Kuan Yew found out, the minister committed suicide and left a note behind that he would rather die than face the consequences Lee Kuan Yew will place there. In Nigeria, when people steal our money, we give them chieftaincy titles. When they steal our money, we give them doctorate degrees. Somebody said that the reason why rich people in Nigeria don't fund research is because there's no substance at the base of their wealth. So when we do not place consequences side by side our actions, we do not send a strong message to the people who have stolen. How do we promote inclusiveness? Number one, we need to be able to embrace the principles of equality, where the children of the rich and the children of the poor can go to public schools because public servants elevate the quality of education in the public schools. Number two, where the children of the poor can get jobs without having connections. When they go to University of Lagos and go to University of Ibadan, and they are given the same kind of jobs that people like me who went to Harvard University Kennedy School can get, that is when we become an equal country. A country where the children of the rich go to school abroad and come back to lead the corporations is not a country. We're just simply cohabiting. The question is that in a situation where the same mind clamors for bread and books, bread will always win. And the political elite of this country have mastered the art because they know that 500 naira and 1,000 naira will make people sell their votes at the polling booth. And so it is not that we young people don't want to organize to take over from you, but it is that your generation has the money to keep our generation aground. When you do not empower our generation to speak English so that we can get the right kind of jobs that will help us stand side by Singapore, Finland, and Canada, you deprive us of our fundamental humanity. As we continue to promote the ideas of diversity, of inclusion, of equality, we need to move forward and think about how to strengthen the economy of Nigeria by diversifying.
Welcome back. And I am sure you must have enjoyed our discussion segment. Most of all, the angle of women in politics that we discussed with our sister Adora. Honestly, she has been able to tutor us as to what we should do. And this is mainly for you women folk. You are the ones that carry the most of the vote. I am yet to see, anytime there is a line of voters, if you check the numbers, it is always the women that are more. The women and the youths. The women and the youths. What she's advocating for is for you women to come out some more. Come out some more, make an impact, get into elective positions. There is nothing on earth that you will get for free. Nobody is going to give you anything for free. If you want money, you go out there and work. If you want positions in politics, you go out there and put yourself on the line to electorate that this is me, vote for me. I believe you women can do a lot in that wise. I expect you to come more into politics. You have the empathy. Honest, I'm a man, but I'll tell you this, you women folks, you are kinder than men. So bring that your empathy into governance, so that most of the things we're going through will not be there. That empathy in you will make sure that the welfare of the people is well taken care of. And the number one thing is, you have a franchise, and that franchise that you have is one man, one vote. Make sure you use that your franchise, and you use it well. Don't be corrupted. Don't take the money. Don't think in terms of stomach infrastructure. If somebody gives you money today and you feel you are happy, you've mortgaged the next 4 years. So don't mortgage your 4 years. Open your eyes well. Make sure you know what you're doing. Don't let anybody coerce you into what you do not want to do. 2023 is round the corner. A new government will come. You should make sure that we have the right government that is going to move Nigeria forward. The development of Nigeria is in all our hands. The development of Nigeria is in that card that you have. That's your PVC that you have. That is part of the development of Nigeria. That is what gives us democracy, and that is why the advice for you this morning is be part of the national development. Make sure you're part of the electorate. Make sure your vote counts. On that note, I would like to say thank you for keeping faith with us. God bless you.